Found out that there was a gentleman who became a widower who was, she went to high school with. They connected and ended up getting married. And so they've been married for about 8 years now, and my wife's aunt's husband has a son, and his son never got married, and he's in his 50s now, but he's got a dog. And they were out on this ranch, and this dog had been loose, run around, and apparently got into a battle with a wild boar. Now, if you've ever seen a dog after it's been in a battle with a wild boar, you know that it ain't pretty. Well, this individual took his dog to the vet and ended up going to College Station, having taken care of. And when it was all said and done, $10,000 later, the dog was better. Well, for $10,000, that dog ought to be better. Ought to be a whole lot of things. But it really got me to thinking. Again, I don't want you to get the wrong impression here. I love animals. I'm not against them. But if you've got $10,000 to spend on your pet, I just have to ask myself, well, are there not people in this world who need that kind of help before you start doing that for an animal? You see, it all comes down to what are our priorities? What is most important to us? And that's why we have to be careful. Jesus said in Luke chapter 12, verse 15, he says, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Verse 15, watch out, be on your guard. And so those types of words, God is saying, you need to be careful. I'm here to tell you, I don't care how old you are. I don't care how long you've been a Christian. If you are on this planet, you need to watch out. You need to be on your guard against all kinds of greed. And he says this, your life is not determined by what you own. Your value in life is not based on where you live, how much money you have in the bank, the kind of car you drive, or the motorcycle you drive. It's not based on any of that stuff. And then Jesus went on in that Gospel of Luke a little bit later, verses 18 and 20, then he told this story to them. He says, there was a gentleman who was a very successful businessman. He had accumulated all kinds of crops, and he kept accumulating, and he said, my goodness, this is great. What am I going to do with all of these goods that I have? And then he had this idea. He says, I know what I'll do. I will build bigger barns, and I'm going to accumulate more, and then I'm just going to sit back, and I'm going to relax, and I'm going to take it easy, and I'm just going to eat, drink, and be merry, because that's what life is all about. But here in the scriptures, you'll notice, but God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you, then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? See, that's just a great reminder. You see, God was not rebuking this man because he had such an abundance. He rebuked him because of his attitude. His heart towards the abundance was, I'm just going to take it easy. I'm just going to go through life, and I'm not going to be responsible with what I have. I'm just going to enjoy everything that I have, and I am going to, I think I just turned something on. What did I do? You can help me out here, sir. So I know I didn't kick that. I hit something down there. I apologize. So anyway, he was just telling this individual, I'm not rebuking you because of what you have. I'm rebuking you for what your attitude, your heart towards what it is that you have. Because his attitude was, this is all for me. And that's why we have got to be on our guard against materialism. It is not about us. If God blesses us with abundance, Our purpose is to use that abundance for His glory. And so that's what brings us to our second thing this morning. Not only are we to guard against materialism, but the second thing is we must be radically generous. God calls us to be radically generous with what He has given to us. We need to be radically generous with our words, with our thoughts, with our actions, with our attitudes, with our resources. Everything, we need to be a generous person. Why? Because God is a generous God. And so therefore, he set that for us, this pattern based on His own life, which is generosity. You see, there are those who will say that they don't like going to churches where they're talking about money or finances or wealth or whatever like this. But really and truly, if you think about it, as you read the New Testament, Jesus spoke more about wealth and money and material possessions than He did about faith, heaven, hell, all combined. And here's why. It's because God is a God of love. And you cannot love without being generous. John 3:16 is the greatest illustration of this. For God so loved the world that He gave. You see, God teaches us that loving includes giving, generosity. And if God is love, and our church is all about love and who God is, then we've got to be about generosity. We have got to be about giving. Because generosity and giving goes hand in hand with love. You see, you can't love if you don't give. If you had children, parents, you love to give. If you are married and you have your honey bunch, you love to give to your spouse. You love to do for them. My wife told me this morning, she says, honey, that was the best breakfast I could have eaten this morning. See, I got up early this morning, as I usually do, and so my wife had made homemade raisin bread back a few weeks ago, and of course we put the loaves in the freezer. So my wife, she's a great cook, great at baking, and so she does all that. And but she does her stuff at night. I sleep at night, okay? But I'm up bright and early. And so anyway, I pulled this loaf of raisin bread out of the freezer, and this morning I got up, I made some syrup, and I made some bacon, or I should say I put it in the microwave. And then I took out that raisin bread, sliced it up nice and thick, and then beat up those eggs, put some milk in it, and some cinnamon, and then you soak that homemade raisin bread, thick stuff like that, Texas toast size, in that batter, put it on the griddle, heated it up, and then served it. And she loved it. You want to know something? That made me feel good. I wanted to do that. You see, I love my wife, and so therefore I am going to give of my time, of my energy, of my efforts. I'm going to serve her because that's evidence that I love her. So I cannot say, God, I love you, and I'm not generous to God. I can't do that. It's just not true. Any more than I can say I love my wife and I'm not generous with her. Or any more than I can say I love my children and I'm not generous with them. You cannot love and be stingy. It goes hand in hand. I have got to be radically generous if I am going to seek first God's kingdom. Because that's exactly who God is. The reason Jesus Christ came to this earth, went through the brutal abuse that he went through, was because of God's love for us. And that's why the scriptures say that God so loved that he gave. And he gave his son Jesus Christ so that we could have forgiveness of sins. It just doesn't get any better than that. And that's why if we want to be like God, we need to be generous. We need to give. There's a third thing this morning as well. Guard against materialism. I must be radically generous. And then this. You can't miss this. I must focus on what matters. This is a challenge. This is a challenge for me personally because when I grew up in up north in Pennsylvania, and then I moved to Virginia after I was 18, I have to tell you that I never saw that many trains like I see here in Texas, especially where I live, and then even my trip here to Houston. I'm just amazed at. Now, I have seen train tracks before, but there were no trains that continue to operate on those tracks where I grew up. And so anyway, when I came down here, I was just amazed to see how many trains still function and how often they're used. So in Brenham, where I live, the train track, they just run straight through our town. And I got to tell you that they really need to call me and let me know when they plan on coming through. Because it seems that they just don't care that I'm sitting there and I have to wait for them. And they just have to learn that if they would just call first, I'll let them know when they need to go. You see, that's how I am, all right? I mean, it's sad, but, I'm driving down the road and people who they drive in the left passing lane and they're right next to the car that they're trying to pass and they don't move, and so you can't get around them and they think like they own it. I mean, that bothers me. But you know what? It shouldn't. It might be an irritant. But I've got to come to the place where I have to recognize, at the end of the day, does that really matter? Does it matter? It only matters if the world revolves around me. The Apostle Paul, at the end of his life, in Philippians chapter 3, he wrote these words to kind of help us along here. He says, "But whatever was to my profit, I now consider loss, compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Jesus Christ, my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them," here's the word, "rubbish, that I may gain Christ." You see, when Paul got to the end of his life, he started reflecting on things. And you have to understand something. Paul, back in the first century, he would be someone who we would consider that had it all. He had wealth, he had notoriety, he had position, he had fame, and then Christ got a hold of his life, saved his soul, and radically changed him. And as a result, Paul's looking back on his life now, and he says, you know what, back when I had all that material stuff, he says, I look at all of that as a loss when I compare it to my relationship with Jesus Christ. In fact, the word he used is translated rubbish. Now, the actual Greek word is skubala. Skubala. That's what it is, and it's translated rubbish. But let me actually give you that. That's actually a nice way to say it. I'm going to tell you what it really means. If we had a bumper sticker and we were speaking the Greek language, then we would probably drive up and see somebody with a bumper sticker that said, "Skubala happens." That's skubala. So what Paul is saying, some of you kids may have to talk to your mom and dad later and explain that to them. Or if you've seen Forrest Gump, you'll get it. But anyway, skubala is the word. And so what he's saying is, everything that I have in this life, if you want to get the right perspective, he says, it's a bunch, It's nothing. It is trash. It's dung. It is not worth it when you compare it to Christ. I remember my wife's grandmother when she was in her 80s and she was close to her death. You know what she started doing? She started giving all of her stuff away. Because she recognized that it's not doing me any good. I mean, my wife got her china, she got silverware, she got jewelry, all kinds of junk. And I kind of looked at it and I thought, well, so I guess my wife's just going to look at it until she gets ready to die, and then she's going to give it away to somebody. But you think about that for a moment. Why do we continue to accumulate stuff if we're not going to make good use of it? If it's just going to sit around and gather dust, or it's just going to be there, and I'm just going to keep on handing it down to the next generation, one day I've got to ask myself, am I really living with the right priority? Am I living with the right purpose? Because at the end of the day, Paul gets it right. He says, if I thought it was some kind of profit, I consider it a loss when I compare it to Christ. Because when I seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, then I have the right perspective. You see, if I live my life as if I've only got a month to live, then I'm going to see that the things that I have, that they're just temporary. I don't need to get all upset over stuff. In fact, here's a great little test for you. If you get frustrated about things or what's going on or what may be happening, and in order to focus on what really matters, ask yourself this question. It's a real simple question. Is what I'm concerned about, is it going to matter in 100 years? Will it matter 100 years from now? You see, here's what matters. What matters are people. People matter. So therefore, I need to be in the people business. We all do. You see, that's what being a Christian is all about. You see, it's more. We come here on Sunday mornings, each week, and we hear about God's word. We get encouraged. We sing praises and things of this nature. But the truth of the matter is, when we walk out these doors each and every week, we should be looking at and focusing on that which really matters. And what really matters are people. When we have a people mindset, it changes the way that we live. That means that I'm going to help this person or that person. I'm going to do what I can to invest, because why? People matter to God. Me sitting at a train doesn't really matter. Me getting frustrated about the other drivers on the road doesn't really matter. Me thinking that I'm going to be happy to be driving around in that truck with my motorcycle in the back isn't going to make me happier. It's not going to matter much 100 years from now. But making a difference in someone's life will. I was in a school a week or so ago, and one of the teachers, a lady, she was very frustrated. She was very upset. And I just started talking with her. And while I was talking to her, I began to find out that she was just really struggling. She was 51 years old, and her husband was divorcing her. And she was really, really upset, because not only was he divorcing her, but the house and pretty much their bank accounts were in his name. And she wasn't going to get anything, or as she put it, and I'll kind of put it in a G-rated form, she was getting hosed. And so, as I was listening to her, when it was all said and done, I looked at her and I said, I understand how hurt you are. But I want you to know something. This is bigger than what you're focusing on. In fact, I want you to consider something. I've got a couple of rules that I live by. Here's rule number one. It's only money. It's only money. The reason that is important to see is oftentimes we look at just the opposite. We look at it as, oh my goodness, it's money! But the way God wants us to see it is, it's only money. And then I said this. I said, how do you know that maybe God has not spared you, if you look at the bigger picture, from something even worse? You see, what could be worse, and I don't say this often, but there are times when I do. I said, what could be worse is that you would still be married to him in that state. So don't see it from the wrong perspective. And what she was struggling with was her world was based on material possessions, and that's why she had a hard time. And I'm here to tell you, if your world is based on material possessions, then whenever those material possessions are negatively impacted, your world will come crashing down because you're not seeking first the kingdom. God says, seek first his kingdom. And then this other stuff is going to take care of itself. So what do we learn here today? Let's just close it off here. Number one, my focus in life shows that which I really and truly love. Whatever it is that I focus on, if I'm focusing on material possessions, then that's what I love. On the other hand, if I'm focusing on Christ, I focus on others, then I have the right perspective. The second thing is I've got to guard against materialism. I've got to be careful. Don't allow materialism to become your focus. Don't let stuff run your life. Be generous. Be a person who is radically generous with what it is that God has entrusted to you, and recognize that you and I are not supposed to be a reservoir. We are to be a river. Instead of just